Hello from Louisiana. I'm Dr. Roger Smith. This is my wife Jan, and we're here to share with you the importance of the home and the home education, the home school, and things that we've learned along the way, raising our 4 children to adulthood, and we home educated them all the way through high school up till they went off to college.
We want to share with you the importance of our homes being a habitat for maximizing the growth of our children. And so in doing that, we start with a verse from Psalm 128.
Yeah, and this passage is really kind of the background for us using kind of this growth theme and a garden theme, and some from Psalm 128 it says, "And your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house, and your children will be like olive plants around your table." And whenever we pictured this passage, we imagined like a garden, and our table is almost like our greenhouse. And so imagine that as we go through some of these ideas about growing and the importance of your home and your home environment.
This is what our children look like now, but there was the day when there were all 4 little ones sitting around the table with Roger reading aloud to them while they played Legos and colored and cut out paper things. And they are just vibrant, loving adults that are all successful in their careers and married, and just a joy and a delight to us. And believe it or not, they love one another as well. Yeah. And that's a delight.
Right. That's really the measure of success, is not so much what do they accomplish, but who do they become as a person, and do they actually get along? Do they love one another? And so that was a huge measure of success for us. And so as we look back at how are our homes like a habitat for people, and what can we do in that home to create an opportunity and an environment for growth. And so the main purpose of the home is actually creating that environment, and we divide it into 2 things: an environment that is ideal for growth, and an environment that is safe.
And we're not talking about the type of safety like free from being shot at and that type of thing, even though that's important and that's a valid thing, and maybe that's why you're even considering homeschooling. But we're talking about safe to grow, safe to learn, free from fear, because God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and discipline and a sound mind. And that's what we want for our children.
And so how do we go about accomplishing a fearless home or reducing fear in the home? Because there's no doubt that fear is an element that actually stifles growth. And so without a sense of safety, growth is stifled. And whenever you're afraid, you tend to be paralyzed, you become overly cautious, and you can't really take the normal action that you would. And so there's a lot of things that we might do that actually create that unsafe or a sense of fear in the home. And sometimes it's without us really intending to. And so instead of just looking at what can we do proactively to create a safe, an emotionally safe home, what are some things that we do that actually create an unsafe home? So
now, some of you may be thinking at this point, this isn't about homeschooling. I don't know that I really even want to watch this. But we encourage you to understand that the environment that you are creating within your home is the first most essential part of successfully homeschooling. When you think back to your school experience and to what you remember whether a teacher loved you or not, how you felt in that classroom. Some of the academics you remember, most of it you don't. And so really, even though we are all about educating your children and teaching them, God said in His Word that if you seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, all these things shall be added to you. And it's almost miraculous how that happens. Remember
Right.
the days when I felt like all I did was to referee between arguments and fights with the children and keeping them fed and clothed and clean. And it's a hard task what you're doing. But all of that stuff, that is this habitat this environment that you want to grow. It's like if you don't take care of the types of things that we're going to be talking with you today in this environment of your own attitude toward your children and the safety that they feel, the security and acceptance that they have, it's like trying to put a plant in the ground that is full of clay or just only sand, that you haven't really done anything to create the right environment to put a plant in. It's not going to grow successfully, no matter how much water you add to it. So we want to talk with you today about the essentials of the environment, and that's all about attitude.
Yeah, and so what are some of the things that we might do that create a fear-filled environment? And one of the things is unclear boundaries. Now, in our American history, there's a story of Christopher Columbus coming to discover the Americas, and whenever he outfitted his ships, he found bold men that were willing to sail into uncharted waters. But those strong and brave men became quite fearful, because at one point in time they perceived that there was a boundary out ahead of them, beyond which, if they went beyond that, all was lost, and they would sail over the edge of the world. And so even the most fierce people, when there's a sense of an unclear boundary, fear can creep in. And so sometimes we create an environment where the boundaries are always shifting, and our children don't know what to expect of us. And so one day something is okay, and the next day it's not, and they're always a little bit on the ledge, so to speak, as this picture portrays. And so,
and that often depends on our mood and how busy and distracted we are.
Yeah. And another thing we can do is set up kind of unachievable or inappropriate expectations. It's like they always have to win. They always have to be the best. And so it's great when that does happen, but that their acceptance by you is not based upon an achievement, but by them doing their best or exploring a new area of interest. Maybe something they're not going to do well, but they were bold enough to explore that. So sometimes we can set up an unachievable or inappropriate expectations.
Often now this happens during the kindergarten and preschool years. Yeah. Preschool 3, and mothers are calling me all stressed out because their kids are not reading. And when I ask how old they are, they may be 3 or 4 years old, and they're wanting them to be ready for kindergarten. Yeah. So be careful. That's like trying to potty train somebody that's 15 months old. Right. That it would be nice, but is that really achievable? Mm-hmm. Is it an unfair expectation? Right.
So the other thing that we often will do is using emotion to control, and you may not think you do that, but we all do it, and we need to be aware of when we are. And one of the key words is whenever you hear yourself saying, "Don't make Mama mad," don't upset Daddy, and that is an emotional language that's saying we are using a fear of emotion to try to control, and that's really unsafe territory. And so their acceptance to you can't be quite so volatile.
You want to always be putting things back on the child, where you make that clear expectation of what you have, and then it's not that you're going to get angry when they don't do it, it's that they're going to experience a consequence, and it's their choice, and it's their consequence, and it's not about your emotion. Ephesians 4 says to be angry and sin not. Right. Anger is one of the least effective tools to manage your children. Yeah.
So the other thing is similar to one of the points we've already made, is associating your approval with accomplishments. And so the flip side to this is associating your approval with who they are as a person.
Their character.
And so someone can't control whether they are pretty or whether they are tall or whether they are whatever characteristics that are external, but we all can control those characteristics which are internal, who they are as a person, and being careful to praise those things as much or more than those external features. The external things are the accomplishments. So,
Better to be kind than to sing well.
yeah, that's right. That's right. So there are some things that set up an environment for optimal growth, and these I got from an old book that says seven things children need, and I thought it was very insightful and concise, and we want to share those with you. And they are the need for significance, and we're going to take these individually, but let me see if I can make this screen change here just for one thing. Okay, so the 7 things are these: the significance, and security, acceptance, to love and to be loved. There's a need for praise, a need for discipline, and then there are spiritual needs. And we want to take these kind of individually, and so we'll begin with the need for significance.
This starts with your own attitude toward yourself. You can't give someone else what you are not. Do you believe that you have great value before the Lord? I love the verse in 1 Corinthians 15:10 that says that I am what I am by the grace of God. And you as a mother, you have to accept yourself. You have to not always be believing the lies that Satan's going to throw at you, but to really, the scriptures say that we are to love others as we love ourselves. And if you don't love yourselves, that is going to really show itself toward your children. So your attitude about yourself is the first thing that you've got to work on to be able to really show value and pleasure to your child.
Yeah. So, training your children to help around the home. You know, and you can see in this picture, the picture of these boys that are really, you can tell they're putting their all into it, and children really want to take on tasks around the home.
That's right.
And it gives them a sense of importance in the family scheme. And it's not just the job of taking out the trash or clearing off the table, but the jobs that they want to do are the ones they can't quite do well. I always say they want to complete before they're competent. They want to try to do something they're not quite yet competent at, and yet we need to allow them to do those things, because if we wait until they're competent, they're not interested. So,
and it really adds value to them. They know when they're doing real work, when it's something that actually matters, and it makes them feel important and valuable part of the family.
One other thing that I often see this done poorly is introducing your children to other people. And whenever you're in a crowd and a friend of yours comes up, turn to your child and introduce them, if it's someone that they don't already know. But even that, just acknowledging your child's presence in the presence of one of your friends, gives them a sense of significance and importance. And so this is I can't underscore this enough, that you need to do introducing your child, or children if you got a group of them,
and teaching them to reach out, to have a good handshake,
right,
and to be able to look people in the eye and to smile and acknowledge that person, even if it's someone they've met many times before. And you say, oh, Emily, you remember, Miss Jones, and she should be able to step up and reach out her hand and say, oh yes, hi, how are you? And to just, including them in who you are.
Yeah, and so that's something that's easy to do, but we often forget to do it. It's just something, and on a similar note, letting your child speak for himself. In this picture, it shows them ordering from a menu, and that's a great place to start. And whenever you are in a restaurant or a place, have them place their order, and that is a good start. But oftentimes, whenever someone asks your child something, be careful
Yes.
not to jump in and take over the conversation, but let them speak to the level that they can.
And even if they're uncomfortable, you can turn and smile at that child and encourage them
Right.
to go ahead and speak up. But if you're always answering for them,
Yeah.
they're not going to learn and grow. They may be perfectly comfortable letting you speak, but later they resent it and they won't have grown in the way that they should. It starts early, at 2 and 3, as soon as they're able to speak.
Yeah. So, do you find that your children are different from one another? You know, they have their own fashion sense or different ways of speaking, or you know, one's more outgoing and other is not. But respecting their opinions whenever possible, you know, the choice of the colors of their clothes or their style.
And that starts much earlier than you want to give it credence.
Yeah, yeah, it really starts early, and so whenever it's possible to respect their opinions, and that may be about activities they're involved in, and certainly with fashion and different things. So
Even what they want to study. You
Yeah.
know, sometimes that's important that they have a real interest in something, allowing them the privilege of studying that. Choices of books. Some books you say, yes, you've got to read this. Others, you let them choose some things from within some choices that you may have already selected, to give them some choices of 2 or 3 things.
So, so respecting their opinions whenever possible, that's great. Oops.
You need to
went back.
spend focused time with your child where, you know, maybe you can't just have every day particular time with each child individually, but regularly you need to find some time to be with each child, whether it's building blocks with your toddler after doing school with the others, or taking a break while they have recess, that you spend some time with that toddler. You know, you know what that means. You know what that looks like.
And
It's important.
you can imagine an image of this, of whenever, if you watch children play in a playground, you can see the child that's at the top of the slide,
That's right.
and that they're calling out to, hey mama, hey daddy, watch me, you know, and that need for your attention. And it can be very small slices of attention that is very important to them. You're cooking or working in the kitchen, and they're pulling on your clothes, and mama, and when you turn to them, they don't even know what they wanted to say. They've already forgotten by the time you've given them your attention. But just stopping for a few seconds and say, "What, honey?" and giving them really attention and listening to whatever it is, however insignificant, and just say, and then you can say, you know, I'm busy right now. Go play, and I'll talk to you later. You know, so there are times where if you give them enough attention and focused time, then they will be able to delay their need for it.
To meet their needs. And you know, we live and breathe by our phones, and you plan your activities,
Yeah.
you do your grocery shopping, all of those things. And you know, but be careful. Give yourself scheduled time to take care of those things, like your groceries and other things. Allow yourself, set a timer for a certain amount of time on Facebook while the kids are outside playing.
Yeah.
But then when they're around, put the phone down and focus on your children. They know what that is. It's like when you were in school and the teacher would walk out of the classroom, instantly people would stop doing what the assignment was and start talking and laughing.
Yeah.
That's what it is when you pick up your phone.
And another important time that is great in this area is bedtime.
That's right.
So instead of scurrying them off to bed and you get involved with other things, take that time to connect with your child and give them some focused attention, because you know, it seems like whenever the child gets horizontal, that's whenever their heart and their mind and their dreams become open to you. And so it's a great time to give them some focused time. Trust your child with responsibility. Now, in these pictures, it shows a lot of teenagers or older children, but I want you to begin to think even earlier, that the earlier you trust them with responsibility, the more responsible they become. So if they don't have responsibility, or they don't have they don't have assigned responsibilities, it's hard for them to develop that skill. And so, and they, like you had mentioned earlier, Jan, they want to do real tasks. They don't want to have the token, just pick up the toys. But where you can assign them a job, early on, pet care is important to them. But as they get older, they want to do more than that. They want to be the one who actually checks the air pressure in the car tires and checks the oil eventually, and they want to be responsible for different tasks and hold their feet to the fire.
Cooking a meal. When your sons go off to college and they're living in an apartment on campus, they need to know how to cook. Yeah. You say, oh, they got the cafeteria. They need to know how to cook.
Yeah.
And that starts while they're still at home.
Yeah, and as well as things like laundry and other things. So
it gives them significance.
Yeah.
And we also want to give them security. Security. When parents are in conflict, it is so unnerving to children. Even if you really love each other and you just say, we're just having, a discussion, a heated discussion, it can cause fear of divorce and make them wonder what they don't know that may be going on. Right. So if you are tense or frustrated, it may have nothing to do with your husband, but they may begin to feel like maybe you're on the brink of divorce and y'all are just not telling them.
So it's continual criticism. You can see this lady's facial expression, and it just reeks of, I am not approving of you. And do your children have a sense of your approval, that you actually like them? There's a thought. So if you're always finding fault, then sooner or later they're just going to assume that they can't please you, and they'll quit trying. And so be careful with criticism. And it's been said that it takes 4 to 5 positive statements to overcome 1 negative. And just kind of take a mental checklist or accounting of the things you've said to your children in the last day. Would you say that you have 4 or 5 positives for every 1 negative?
Catch them doing something right.
Yeah.
And affirm them for that.
So they also need our acceptance, and to some degree that was what that it was talking about. But we do need to recognize that your child is unique, and maybe it's not outlandish uniqueness, but every child is different. And one of our first one was more into leadership and speaking kind of things, and then our daughter was also she was more in the creative arts, and then as well as our third son. Every one of them are different in their unique way. And they don't all do things at the same time. Their timetables are different, and appreciating how they are different. And it's not just something you tolerate, but something you celebrate.
In Ephesians 2 where God talks about that, and he says, for you are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which he prepared beforehand that you should walk in them. And so each child is called by God for particular works that they are called to. And I loved it in high school when they would begin to do things and be called out by youth pastors or other people and given adult type responsibilities. Maybe I remember our one son that was offered to lead the Bible study for the skateboarders. He was a skateboarder, and they respected him. And so when the youth pastor asked him to lead the Bible study, he came home and he said, "Mom, you must have talked with him." And I said, "Sweetheart, you're going to have to talk to your father. And I'm talking
Which
about
father?
your heavenly father, because your mom and dad didn't have anything to do with this. This is God's call in your life, and your unique purpose, and your unique ministry, even as a 15, 16-year-old.
Right.
And so we need to continue to point them back to that. And in terms of our acceptance of one another, that God has called us to accept one another.
So some of their uniqueness may be genetic, as in the case of this picture. Some of it is their interest and their skills or different things. But find where it is that your child is unique. In this picture is what's called one of the relief statues, or that's not the right word, but this was a Michelangelo, and this to us looks like it was unfinished, but his mission in leaving it like this was to show that whenever he got a piece of marble to create a statue, he studied it for several hours before he began, and that he said, in this stone there is a man, and my job is to help get rid of the things that are not the man, not the unique person that's in that stone. And that's a picture of our job as parents, is we are helping this person emerge from their stone, so to speak, and that the real person comes out. And sometimes it's a surprise to us as to who that person is. You know, each one of our children surprised us in many ways. We go, well, that wasn't what we were aiming for, but that's great.
And so many other things. We can look back now that we see the full-blown person and say, wow, I see now as a little child some of the things that you did or wanted to do or tried to do and did, that was leading toward this ultimate purpose of God's provision in your life.
And because of the uniqueness of each one, you know, I want you to imagine this picture right here of this greenhouse, and just imagine if every one of the plants was the same. It wouldn't be nearly so beautiful, and your family, your table, your garden, so to speak, would not be so beautiful if everyone was the same. So uniqueness is great. It's a good thing. Sometimes it challenges us, but it is something that we should celebrate. So help your child find satisfaction in achievement. You know, them being satisfied in the achievement. Find things that they do well and let them excel in it. Now, it's not that they have to win the first prize, but to the degree that they are successful, let them find their personal satisfaction in that. And so that'll be different for each one of them as to what really lights their fire.
And it's easy when they first start off, like in this picture where the child is learning to walk. We celebrate their milestones readily when they're little. But as they get older and learn to, pump the swing or do other things, we need to acknowledge those things. When they get big enough to begin to do things in a kind way to their younger siblings that they couldn't do just a year ago, that you see, recognize the growth and celebrate those things as well, and not just the outward physical achievements, but those internal growth measures that you recognize and say, I saw what you did, and I see that is you really maturing.
You have really grown, and I'm proud of you. So those are some powerful words. I am proud of you. And so letting your child know that you actually do like him or her as a person. And one way that we do that is through eye contact. Whenever we look directly into someone's eyes with a delightful look,
that's right,
they know that they feel your pleasure. And that's something. Don't just use your eye contact whenever you're trying to communicate that you're upset with them or that they displeased you, but your eye contact should be showing them your pleasure and that they are a delight to you. And so there's one of the scriptures that comes to my mind whenever I talk about delight. It says, a father disciplines his son, the one in whom he delights. And most people focus on the discipline part, but really I want to talk about the delight, because that's one thing that children really need. That is an essential need, their sense of significance and acceptance by you.
And it also causes them to be able to want to please you in such a way, like when Joseph said, "How can I do this thing and sin against my God?" He didn't want to displease his father, his God, and that you will find is a major motivating factor, especially as they get older, in wanting to please you and wanting to honor you.
So another thing is important is open and honest, genuine communication. And lots of times parents try to spare children of difficult topics, but they really appreciate you just being honest and talking with them. Certainly as they grow older, but if you're waiting until they're getting ready to leave the home to try to have a significant, deep, honest conversation, you've waited too late. And so the earlier the better, and children can understand far more than we give them credit for.
They're aware when you're struggling with something, and yet it's often that they begin to feel like it's them that's causing the problem. That if you're upset about something, they feel personally responsible. Just like in divorce, often kids blame themselves, or that daddy left because I wasn't being good enough or something. So if you've got something going on and you're worried about something, let them know. Talk with them about it and say, "Mom's upset today because I'm worried about a friend that's sick," or something like that. Be specific with them. Stop and pray together. Or if you have snapped and gotten frustrated, especially when it's one of those situations that maybe things are out of proportion because you're upset about some other thing going on in your life, stop and apologize to your children and say, Mama is upset about something else, and I'm sorry I took that out on you. That was wrong. They know when you've messed up. It's not a surprise to them. So you may as well go ahead and really be genuinely honest. But the more you can communicate with your children about the life's realities of what's going on, the better. You don't want to put undue burdens on them, but you do want to talk with them.
Yep. Listening to your child is very important. Sometimes what they have to say doesn't seem so important to you, but it does to them. And I remember the time whenever my oldest child was just a toddler, and he was pitching a fit of some sort, and my father-in-law pulled me aside and he said, that little fella right there, that his problems don't seem very big to you, but they're the biggest problems he's got. And in the same way, what your child wants to say to you are important words to them. And the most important thing in that is that you actually listen. And you see in this picture the mother getting down at eye level and making eye contact and listening. And that's so important in a child's self-esteem. So treating your child like a person of worth. In these pictures, you can see that they are like in the bottom left, there's like a brainstorming session. They were actually trying to solve problems, taking them to places where they are growing, and you're investing in them. And I remember whenever we were challenged to take our son to a leadership conference whenever he was 14 or 15, and someone recognized leadership in him. And we took him to a business leadership conference. He was the youngest person there. And so
we took the whole family, actually, and a pastor friend. It was a John Maxwell conference, and after that conference, he began to read all the John Maxwell books he could find. For his 16th birthday, he asked us to go to another conference for that. That's what the 16-year-old wanted, was to go to a leadership conference.
Yeah. And so there are opportunities that you can see for your child to grow, and maybe it's resources that maybe it's not going to something or being a part of an activity, but maybe they need something, a tool that helps them to do what they want to do best. Maybe it's a camera or a guitar or whatever it is that actually helps them sense their worth in the family, if you're willing to go out of your way or spend extra resources on them and their personal growth.
As simple as a hug can also be a way of showing them that they're worth something for you.
Yeah. So to love and be loved. I got this description from Dr. Ross Campbell's book, How to Really Love Your Children, and he portrays the child's emotional needs as it being like a tank inside the body, and the tank has things that actually fill it up and things that kind of drain the tank. And whenever the fuel tank is full, the engine of the soul operates better. And just like in a car, when it's running out of fuel, it spits and sputters and chokes. And so, but what can we do to fill the emotional tank of our children? And if you imagine it like the stomach, there are things that we do to fill the stomach. We use the word eat. And so each letter stands for 3 things that you can do, some of which we've already talked about, but this is where it really, you can create this image in your mind to remind you how to build your child's emotional, fill their emotional tank. And the first one is eye contact. So your child feels love when you give them really direct eye contact, and I mean looking into their pupil, not just looking at their face generally, but you can tell when someone on the stage looks in the audience and looks directly at you. You can feel it, and you're 100 feet away. What about your child that's 4 or 5 feet away? They know when you're making eye contact with them, and it fuels their tank. Focused attention. So A stands for the attention, and you could remember the child that the mother was kneeling down, looking into the face and listening, giving attention, reading a book, playing a game with them, holding them sometimes. And then the other thing is the physical touch. So eye contact, focused attention, and physical touch. So sometimes it's just putting your hand on their neck as you're walking along, holding their hand when you cross the road or go into a crowd. That physical touch where your skin touches their skin, it fuels their emotional tank. So those are some 3 simple ways. So praise. In the book that I drew this from, it made this statement: praise is to children as sun is to flowers.
Well, one of the things is possible for your children for you to truly love your children, but for them not to feel loved. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's because we are stingy with praising them because they irritate us. They make us mad. They disobey us. And sometimes we may kind of want to punish them a little bit by withholding our praise. And it's a dangerous thing, moms and dads, to not really give your children the praise that they need. And, the scripture says to be quick to hear and slow to speak, but that does not mean not to give them praise.
Right.
It means to focus on listening, focus on understanding your child. And then when we understand them, you give pointed, specific praise to them. And you talk about creating an environment where they'll grow. They will grow.
People seldom change because we point out their faults. So if you really want to fuel change in your child, we need to praise. And Jan had already made the statement earlier, catch them doing something right. And so we work often hard to find people making mistakes, and we point those out and rub their nose in it, so to speak. But catch them doing something right and praise them for it, and let them feel your pleasure. And the more they know what pleases you, the greater the chance that they will want to please you again. And so
Hebrews 3:13 says that we are to encourage one another as long as it's still called today, so that none of you are hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. And so we need to encourage each other. And that child that is the one that's the hardest for you, you don't want them to be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin by constantly harping on what they're doing wrong. And those are the ones that are most important, to try to find something that they can be responsible for and say, yes, you did a good job.
Yeah.
Give them an opportunity to do something right.
And especially whenever they're learning a new task and they don't do it quite to your liking, we got to find something in their effort that
That's
is
good.
worthy of praise, and rather than going, "Oops, you tore the bag of trash," you know, they were doing their best to carry out the task. So find something in that mistake to praise, and then after they feel your pleasure, you can then, say, "Let's do it this way next time."
Right, yeah.
And
Hold
so-
it from the bottom.
So, praise what the child is responsible for. And so, they want to have some tasks that are theirs. And whenever they do complete those, praise them for accomplishing it, particularly whenever you don't have to remind them for it. So when they've made their bed and they know that they are to do that, it's easy just to kind of check it off in your mind and go, done. But find a way to praise them, whether it's through a chart and getting a star or getting some type of reward or something of some sort. But where you can find that they have an assigned responsibility, praise them for those things whenever they do it on their own initiative, particularly. So the praise must be sincere, though. It's amazing to me how children can detect fraud pretty easily. Sometimes adults are easily fooled, but children are not. They know when your praise is sincere. So find something that you can genuinely praise, and it can be the smallest thing, but the praise must still be sincere. So I mentioned this. I got out of turn here, but the child, what he does on his own initiative, those are the things that you can most easily praise him for, and those are the ones that your praise has probably the most power. So it's not where you've had to nag and cajole and get the child to do what was assigned, but whenever they went out of their way and did something on their own, did their own initiative, they knew that their task was to feed the dog.
For it not to be a backhanded compliment either, like, well, it's about time. I was wondering when you were going to do that.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to not be a little bit cynical sometime.
So the sooner the better. And the picture shows these adults at a sporting event. And when is it that we praise something at a sporting event? Do we wait till halftime, then all stand up and we cheer? And no, as soon as the good thing has happened, we cheer. And so the sooner that you can praise your child, the better. So the other thing that I didn't cover there was the more praise you can do in public, the better. And so especially if you praise them in front of their friends. So whoever is important to them, if you praise them in front of them, maybe it's a grandparent or a neighbor or someone. But
And not
praise in
just the
public.
child that's the insecure one, where you feel like they need to be bolstered.
Yeah.
Often that child that's working really, really hard for you is the one who really needs it. They might seem secure,
Yeah.
but they need your praise too. So make sure that you dole it out to the good, the bad, and the ugly, all of the children, the secure one and the insecure one.
So children, in addition to needing praise, they need discipline. And so we can divide discipline into kind of categories. And here we've got it listed as regulation, imitation, and inspiration. And oftentimes people get hung up on the regulation and the setting the rules and punishing the crimes. And so that is a part of discipline. They need to know what is accepted behavior and know that there are consequences associated with violations of that. But that should be the smallest part of the area of discipline. Imitation, where they are copying someone else. They're seeing someone else do it well. In fact, their biggest role model is you.
I was going to say, If you want them to learn to do something, then do it with them repeatedly over time. And then you can pass over the reins to them taking that job on as their own. Whether it's, mowing the yard, or you want them to learn how to do any sort of task, whether that's to read their Bible. Do they see you reading your Bible when they wake up? Not just talking about something, but being positive, worshipful. Do you worship? Do you sing? Is there melody in your heart? Are you respectful to their father? And yet you want them to be respectful to you? So how do you talk about others? If you want them to be kind in what they say, make sure that you're kind in how you approach them and how you talk about others. So you're that example. Again, you can't give them something that you don't have yourself, is what Heidi St. John says. And I think it's just so great. So it's important that first these things become a part of your life. Physical discipline, where you might take them one at a time. That may be where you can give some focused attention, is to do a walk and give the others some things to do. And whether your children are an appropriate age, that you can take one of them on your walk, and maybe they ride their bike and you do the walking, but do with them. That's how they learn.
Yeah. And so also in the area of imitation, maybe it's something they're learning to do or be responsible in. Find a hero for them that they can spend some time with, and that person coach them, or be the person who kind of becomes the inspiration, which is the third aspect or section of discipline. And so sometimes we need to fan the flames of the fire in their soul, so to speak, that inspires them to want to be great. And sometimes it is either reading books of heroes that were great in a certain area, exposing them to other people that are heroes of a sort,
Right.
but also that praise, and say, when you see the beginnings of that character develop, the smallest degree of kindness or the smallest degree of honesty that comes out, recognize that and praise that, to fan the flame, so to speak, that area might grow, and thereby you inspire them to pursue a deeper growth and self-discipline. So the whole goal is self-discipline. So
the scriptures say that we're to keep fervent in our love for one another, and the whole spirituality is that they understand who God is and how He loved us, what He did because of that love. And we want to challenge our children to understand the unseen world that's around them and within them. In 1 Corinthians 1, it talks about the fact that, actually I think it's 1 Corinthians 2:10, that says that these things are spiritually discerned, that the Spirit of God exposes the deep things of God to us. And so we need to pray, and as we point out to them the creation of God, whether you're at the beach, whether you're in your yard, and you just are marveling about the springtime or the changing seasons, animals that you see, the storms that come. We've had several storms that have portrayed the power of God lately in our area. This spring we've had several things that have just really said God is real.
Yeah. And it's not so much just the activities of church, the activities of the scriptures. Though I'm not discrediting those. I'm saying it's bigger than that. It is the sense that there is an unseen world. Just like our relationship, there's a lot of relationship between us. It's more than what our touching and our interacting. It's our sense of knowing one another and knowing the unseen. And so it may start with nature and understanding some things about that, but expanding that to understanding relationships. And the spirituality is a relationship thing. And so as they grow, We want them to understand the unseen world around and within them. And so, getting back to the plant idea is that, there are times of planting and feeding and watering, and it leads to harvest. Sometimes these seasons are longer than others, and it seems like you're spending all your time tending to, delicate little plants. But you got to see that there is a cycle, and
That's
it continues on, and it's
Do not grow weary in well doing, because if you persevere, you will reap. So don't grow weary, moms. They are not always going to be little. They are going to grow, and you're going to love your adult children. I have one that I say regularly, I'm so glad that I didn't shoot you, because he's such a delight. He's an amazing young man.
He was very challenging.
He was something.
Yeah.
He was. And all of you have one of those. So persevere.
Yeah.
Believe in the person that child is going to become, and the way God is going to use that strong will or that determination. This is the full results here, and thank God we're still adding more little ones. And it's a delight, and I am amazed as I watch them with their little ones, how 24/7 it is.
Yeah.
But it is so worthwhile, and you will reap a harvest if you continue to love each other. Love covers a multitude of sins, and they are gonna. If there's that bedrock of acceptance and of knowing one another, then it creates a security.
Right.
And as they get older, they are going to be free to learn, free to experiment, free to create, and to do things that are beyond what you even can imagine for them. So, moms, lay that foundation of creating the right environment for growth, emotional safety in your home. And it's an ongoing work.
Right.
The last 2 weeks during the coronavirus, we've had one of our sons and his 3 little children and wife here. And one morning he told me, he said, well, my wife was trying to figure out how she could say something to you, and I need to be safe for that daughter-in-law to talk to.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty strong woman, and I'm still working on being a safe place for my daughter-in-laws who married very strong men. And I want to still create that. I'm still working on these same concepts as our family grows and changes. And you know what, though? It's exciting. It's exciting to continue to do the hard work of building relationships. And we challenge you to accept one another and to love one another with the love that God has given you. And it's worthwhile. Then it won't matter what curriculum you choose. They're going to want to learn.
That's right.
I mean, academics are important. And that's going to be a large part of the work that you're doing, is helping them learn, helping them grow. But if they don't feel loved, it's not going to happen.
Right. Yes.
And so it's ultimately not going to matter how smart they are and how much they know if they don't have a relationship with you or with God, if they don't care about anybody else.
Information does not feed the soul. And the soul is what makes the person likable, effective, influential. We all know people that know lots of stuff, but you can't stand them. We don't want our children to be those. We're not saying be ignorant. It's not like be ignorant or be likable. You can have both, but if you don't work on the relationship and these essential needs that these children have for significance and security and spirituality and all these 7 aspects, their need for praise, if we don't meet those needs, then we can get that lopsided child that knows lots of facts, but no one likes being around them. And so we've got to work on the character as well. And so,
I think about the example of when you're needing to cook supper, and supper is a legitimate thing that you want your family to have. That let's say that's like the academics.
They might call it dinner.
They might call it dinner. That's
Okay.
right. If you're working on dinner, and yet you've got a 4-year-old that's losing it, and they just, I don't know about you, but when I start cooking, everybody gets hungry and they want it right now.
Yeah.
And so, but if you will stop and give that child some eye contact, some focused attention for a little bit, and really love on that child, touch them, and maybe it's 10 minutes that you stop and do an activity with them, but then you go back and finish dinner, and that child's emotional need was met,
Yep.
and there's peace in the home. That's how I'm talking. That's what an example of what we're talking about with the academics. The academics are important, and we are home educating our children. That's what this is about.
Right.
But if you don't meet those emotional needs, it's not going to matter. Supper's going to be miserable. Nobody's going to want to be at the dinner table because you're going to all be mad at one another. And that's not what we want. We want to meet those emotional needs of your children and to create an environment that is a fragrant aroma of Christ.
Right. So just remember, your wife is like a fruitful vine, and your children are like olive plants around your table. May your garden grow richly, and that in the end you reap a bountiful harvest. Oops. Okay. There we go. Here is, okay, there's our closing slide. So I have a video blog weekly. I have a parenting tip. It's called Parenting Matters Now. It is on Facebook. So if you look for Parenting Matters Now on Facebook, you'll find me. And 2 years worth of 2 to 5 minute tips on parenting, a variety of topics and ages, for different ages. And then Jan is in the development stages of a podcast about a woman and the influence of her home, particularly for those who are leaving the workplace and making the choice to come back as a full-time woman in her home.
For that season. That's right. Season of motherhood.
So, may your garden grow and bloom and be fragrant. This is Roger and Jan Smith.
Bye.